Right. So we've got some good disguises. You want to tell me about them?
We're private investigators and we are time travelers. And we're going back to the Woodstock Festival, the very, very first one, where there were hundreds of thousands of people, to investigate why the organisers didn't do something about the mud.
Yeah.
Right. I'm no one in particular. I'll see how I go with these sunglasses. Because it's actually really quite dark here this morning. So I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to see in my disguise. And B, they are a slightly different prescription from the ones I normally am wearing. So how I'll go.
These are so dirty you can't see out.
I'll go through what our topics were for this May story time. And I'll do the little poem that I've done. And then by then, hopefully, anyone else who's going to join us will have made their way in. So we had, Dad wanted some more dog stories. So there are some more dogs. Pen pals. When you think you're being inconspicuous or sneaky, but you're not, or you're being too sneaky and inconspicuous and therefore finding out embarrassing things or seeing things you didn't want to. Chocolate frogs. Passwords. I've put down one from the waiting list, which is the connecting to audio face. Because Mum and Dad and I have noticed that everyone makes the same face when they're doing the Zoom, waiting for the audio to connect thing. And I've popped down disguises and a few other things related to when you're on a video call, which I'd had for a while, which is the thing where it's a little bit like when you say bye to someone, then you walk the same way. Like you say bye and then you can't work out how to leave your video call. So I've added that in. This is a very short little poem called Sneak. Shh, proceed quietly, not even a whisper. The things you might discover, concealed, blended over, smudged like colours brought together by the tip of a thumb on the page. Under the leaves, listen, softly. Let the world tell you secrets. Flit in the shadows, a bird in the breeze, a moth on the curtain. Become all-knowing.
Nice.
This is called Letters, Dogs and Chocolate Frogs. Dear Shay, well, here we are. Another Mother's Day tomorrow. 1 whole year since my son and your daughter had the same gift idea with the Plants and Crafts pen pal kit, and I left my first letter in the garden shop mail drop. I can't believe we've managed to write to each other all this time and still succeed in keeping our real identities secret. I mean, we live in the same town. I often think, when I'm at the hairdresser or wandering through the farmer's market, gee, any of these people could actually be Shay. We could be standing right next to each other in the shop queue and never know it. Maybe we even know each other already by other names. It might be a shame to find out if that was the case, I suppose. It would feel like ending up with one friend where we thought we had two. Anyway, it's also wonderfully thrilling and mysterious having a secret pen pal. I planted the sunflower seeds you sent in your last letter right outside my kitchen window. I think some galahs might have stolen a few, but others are sprouting already. I'm so looking forward to having their bright, sunny flower faces right at my window. Thank you for sending them. You know how my dog likes to bury things in my garden beds, so I've had to keep him round the back while they're growing. He's not too pleased and keeps pulling my underwear off the washing line and hiding it under the hedge in retaliation. I found one of my bras wrapped around a squeaky chew toy under there yesterday. Goodness knows what my neighbours think about me. I've tried to catch the dog in the act of stealing things from the washing line, but he's really sneaky. It's like he knows when someone's looking. How is your puppy? I hope better behaved than mine, and all better after having her paw patched up by the vet. Anyway, I've got to clean all my craft things off the table so that my stepdaughter has somewhere to sit for brunch tomorrow, and we can fit the laptop to talk to my son. It's currently got quite a lot of glue patches with scraps of collage paper stuck to them on it. I hope you like the postcard and enjoy the chocolate frog with a cuppa. Love, Wendy. Jade finished reading the letter out loud and sighed. I don't know, Jazz, she said to her daughter. She's right. It is exciting having a secret pen pal. But I also think we'd get along well in person. We could synchronize our dog walks or plant things together. Well, why don't you just tell her that you feel that way then, Mum? Replied Jazz, rolling her eyes and packing scones into the picnic basket. I'm sure she'd happily drop the mysterious thing now that you've been writing to each other for so long. Carter wandered into the kitchen, looking as though he'd already forgotten what he'd come in for.
Yeah.
Hi, Dad, Jazz smiled. Are you printing something in the study? Carter then remembered what he'd come in for. Wombot 14.1 needs new springs, he declared, opening the chaos drawer. I need the scissors for the Carter-proof packaging. Jazz shook her head. Right. Carter looked at Jade. You're going to try and work out who your pen pal is without her knowing, he said, like this was something he definitively knew. Want to help? Asked Jade. You love subterfuge. No, Mom, Jazz groaned. What if she finds out and thinks you're a creep? Lily, the standard poodle, stood up on her hind legs at this juncture, neatly stepped up to the kitchen counter and took one of the scones from the picnic basket, putting an end to the discussion as Jade was obliged to try to cover her amusement and scold the dog. A rabbit wouldn't do that, grumbled Carter. A few streets away, Yu-Wen set the laptop up on top of a pile of gardening books and squinted at the dialogue box that had come up on the screen, inexplicably small and off-center. Silently, Albie did the same in the video feed. Bloody thing, Yu-Wen muttered. Why can't the sound just default to on? It's connected now, Mum, said Albie. I can hear you. Oh, shit. English swearing, Mum? You've been spending too much time at the hairdresser. Yu-Wen snorted. It's not the hairdresser, ladies. It's this pen pal. I can't exactly write Mandarin curses in a letter, can I? She'd be confused. And if she can read them, it might give away who I am. Albie laughed. So you're still keeping up the anonymous thing after a whole year? I like that. I wonder if she's different in her letters to what she's really like. If you know her in person, you know. Don't get all tree falling in the woods about it, Albie, complained Albie's stepsister Rose. Yu-Wen poured some tea. Well, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to work out who she is before she works out who I am. It's a secret mission. She grinned and winked. Dear Wendy, I'm so glad to hear the sunflowers have sprouted. I'm afraid I cannot say my dog is any better behaved than yours. Today she stole a number of things out of the picnic basket as we were trying to get ready for our lunch outing. The difference is she isn't subtle about it at all. I guess she knows I'm not very good at being annoyed because she will just blatantly take food from right in front of me. I tell her off and she just looks at me like, you're not the boss of me. Which of course I'm supposed to be, but she's just like, whatever. I think she's a teenager in a dog's body. How was your brunch? Did you manage to get all the glue off the table? I did appreciate your collage work on the postcard. Thank you. It's far too nice to send to anyone else, so I framed it and put it up on the windowsill. I'm enclosing the customary return chocolate frog and some stones I painted as part of a mindfulness class. Perhaps they can guard the roots of some of your seedlings from the dog. I must go now. My partner makes things at home. I won't say what, or it might give me away a bit, but suffice to say, One of his creations is currently going wrong, and I can hear him shouting at it, which probably means he needs some help. I'll think of you tomorrow when I walk the dog at the reserve. Perhaps we'll be passing close by one another. Love, Shay. Jade put the pen down and marched into the study where Carter was crawling about on the floor. What happened? She inquired, peering at the ground to see if she could identify what Carter was down there seeking. Lily went under the desk and head-butted it so the 3D printer went wobbly and the holes don't line up right on Wombot's sides, Carter replied grumpily. And then she crashed into me while I was trying to get the screws to go in anyway, and I've dropped them all over the floor. Jade got down on her hands and knees and began looking for screws. Early Monday morning at the reserve was a dog party. The whole dog-owning portion of the neighbourhood seemed to emerge from their houses at once and proceed around the reserve's perimeter with their pets in tow, or in some cases, towing them. Yu-Wen's dog, Larry, was one of the towing her variety. Larry was of the opinion that humans would not exercise effectively unless they were towed at speed. Since he was a Great Dane, towing Yu-Wen was no trouble for Larry, and he was able to perform this important duty without outwardly appearing to strain at the leash. Yu-Wen seemed to have a different goal from normal for this morning's walk. She was requiring a lot more towing and seemed to be making a special effort to look at all the other dogs in turn. A strange blank expression on her face and a pair of sunglasses perched on her nose, despite the overcast sky. Larry, being a very perceptive dog, suspected that this was having the opposite effect to what Yu-Wen desired, as other dog walkers kept glancing at her, slightly disconcerted by the glasses and the deadpan mouth that could be seen below them. From what Larry could understand, Yu-Wen wanted to blend in, but in trying to do so, she was actually standing out. Perhaps he could help. Larry knew that he was quite good at doing things in an inconspicuous way. Yu-Wen had only found 3 of the 10 undergarments he'd stolen and buried this week. He looked around and saw that several other dogs were splashing in the pond. That seemed like something he could easily join in with. He hauled Yu-Wen in the direction of the water, and she hurriedly unclipped his leash before he hurled himself in. Larry paddled out to the gaggle of dogs in the deeper section, sniffed noses, and blended his large, patchy grey and white form into the crowd. Yu-Wen stood on the shore, watching a poodle, who was ignoring the other dogs in the water, preferring to act like a hoover for picnic scraps. Could that be Shay's dog? It certainly fitted the food-focused description. Perhaps if she watched it for a while, she'd be able to see who it went back to. Yu-Wen edged up next to a tree and tried to stand in its shadow and in line with the trunk, so as to have an inconspicuous vantage point to observe the dog. "Do you mind?" asked an annoyed voice. Yu-Wen jumped and glanced to her left to discover that she had backed up almost shoulder to shoulder with a couple who were kissing behind the tree. "Oh, sorry." She edged away again and stubbed her toe on a tree root. "Ow!" Several people nearby looked up at her this time. Yu-Wen pushed her sunglasses more firmly against her face and looked up, trying to see where the poodle had gone. It wasn't hard to spot the dog, who was yapping and jumping up at its owner's pocket, where Yu-Wen supposed there must be some treats. Unfortunately, the owner, who was immersed in a large dark green duffel coat and wearing a hat, had their back to Yu-Wen and was striding off with the poodle along the path. If she wanted to get a look at the owner of the poodle, Yu-Wen would have to retrieve Larry and follow. She looked at the water. There were no more swimming dogs. She turned around. At first saw no sign of Larry at all, and then spotted him some distance away, calmly trotting between someone else's retriever and dachshund, clearly about to go home with another family with whom he'd comfortably blended in. Larry, hey, excuse me? Yu-Wen ran after the walkers, her boots rubbing her heels. Excuse me, that's my dog. Larry, what are you doing, you sneak? The family all looked at Yu-Wen with a mixture of amusement and concern. Jade, meanwhile, was having a serious discussion with Lily the poodle. Look, you dreadful dog. I was doing good inconspicuous research there, and you went and drew attention to us by being a glutton. Why do you always have to eat everything in sight? I didn't even get to set the chocolate frog test up. She crossly stuffed several chocolate frogs back into her pocket. Well, I guess we'll have to try again at the farmer's market. Wendy's mentioned going to that before. After stocking up on chocolate frogs and dog treats from the corner store, Yu-Wen and Larry made their way slowly home, glancing into every front yard that contained a dog or full-size sunflowers. Yu-Wen wondered if it was too soon to write to Shay again. More letters meant more potential clues, however. So she shooed Larry into the back garden and settled at the dining table. Dear Shay, today at the park, my dog almost went home with another family without them noticing. If your dog is a teenager, I think mine might be a member of the CIA. She paused and chewed on her pen for a moment. A small white lie might lead to a few more clues in Shay's next reply. They all love their food, our canine friends, don't they? With mine being such a sneak, I have to watch out for him stealing snacks out of babies' prams and people's handbags when we're at the park. Does your dog act like it's her job to clean up public spaces?
No.
My brunch was nice on Sunday, thanks. Except I delayed the video call with my son by almost an hour by changing the password on my email, forgetting what I'd changed it to, and not being able to get in to get the link he'd sent. I swear there are more things to set a password for by the day. I don't know how anyone can remember them all. How was your picnic once you got there? Did your dog leave you any picnic food? Thank you for the beautiful painted stones. I don't think they would stop my dog's giant digging paws, but they do make a beautiful addition to my table centerpiece, and I like to look at them when I need to think or calm down. I think I'd like that mindfulness class you went to with the painting. Would you recommend it? I'm enclosing... Oh, damn. She hadn't really done much craft or seed collecting since she last wrote to Shay. Yu-Wen got up from the table and went out into the backyard to where her potting shed sat like a squat grass-haired bunyip against the fence. She pulled down a box of dried flower and seed heads in little bags and flicked through the packets. Selecting some marigolds and some poppies, Yu-Wen took 2 small paper envelopes from a tray on the dusty wooden table and tapped some seeds into each one. As she emerged from the potting shed, she noticed that Larry was lying on the ground near the back fence with his nose pressed to a small gap between the panels, tail wagging occasionally against the ground behind him and making an arc in the dirt. Hey, Larry, what are you watching? Larry jumped a little bit and glanced back at her with a reproachful squint. Yu-Wen went over as quietly as she could and made to lie down beside Larry and look through the fence too. Unfortunately, Larry chose that moment to swish his tail, and Yu-Wen tripped on it and made a sound like "wah!" falling against the fence with a bang. There was a brief sound of movement from behind the fence, and then all was still, and Larry got up and walked away in disgust. Well, you were the one who tripped me up, Yu-Wen told him. She glanced back at the fence. I probably wouldn't have liked what you were looking at anyway. Later that week, Jade was about to go into the garden shop when she spied, around the trailing leaves of a hanging plant, another woman approaching with a dog. The hood was up on the woman's coat, but Jade could see that there was an envelope in her free hand. Hurriedly, Jade untied Lily's lead from the veranda post and tugged the poodle around the side of the building. Woof! 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 exclaimed Lily. Shh, shut up, we're hiding. Jade crouched down and pulled Lily closer and grabbed her face in her hands. Lily gave her what could only be described as a mocking grin. Jade listened hard as the other woman's footsteps approached the garden shop doorway. She heard her tell the dog to stay and the ding of the shop doorbell as the door opened and closed. Right, here's the plan, Jade whispered to Lily. I'm going to sneak in and leave some chocolate frogs at the counter and in the display bowls. Then I'll come back and watch and listen to see if she grabs them or asks about them. If she does, we have a good bit of evidence that she's Wendy. Just then, Jade became aware of some movement nearby. She turned and found that a younger woman was standing in the alley between the shops with her, unnoticed in her focus on the shop front. Oh, she said, trying to kneel next to her dog in a less weird way. Hi. Hello, said the young woman, frowning a bit and twirling a kind of small package in her fingers. Then she gave a strange little snorting giggle, turned and jogged off back into the main street. I wouldn't hang out here, she called back over her shoulder. People go down this alley for all kinds of reasons. By the time Jade recovered and returned her attention back to the garden shop, the other dog was gone from the shop veranda, and the woman who had arrived with him was no longer in sight either. Damn it! Jade stood up, went in and dropped her letter off, and headed straight back out again and home. By her heel, Lily the poodle glanced back as she trotted up the street, grinning at Larry, who had hidden himself behind a row of potted shrubs. On the weekend, at the farmer's market, Yu-Wen had found a great vantage point for seeing most of the market without getting lost in the crowd. She was behind the canvas wall of one of the marquees, with a clear view through the join in the fabric to most of the market street. Apart from a young woman a few marquees down who periodically came around the back of her own marquee and had in passing glanced over and smiled at Yu-Wen, everyone was between the tents and paying her no attention. Every now and again, when she spotted a woman with a dog walking along the stalls, Yu-Wen would watch closely to see if the woman had any characteristics she associated with Shay. The rest of the time, she was a bit bored just standing there. So she did a bit of Tai Chi practice while no one was looking. On the other side of the canvas wall, where the sun's rays were blocked by the tent, several friends were sitting and eating together and watching the shadow puppet show, wondering if it was intentional street entertainment. Jade had not noticed the interesting silhouette on the wall, owing to having been asked by another market goer how much the sweet potatoes cost, and currently being in the process of trying to explain that she was not the stall holder, however well she might seem to fit in. This took some convincing, and when she finally escaped from the vegetable stand, Jade realized that she'd not actually managed to buy the tomatoes she'd wanted. Apparently, the stall holder herself now believed Jade to be an employee of hers, and she'd kept asking Jade to get things from the van instead of taking her payment. Eventually, Jade gave up and headed a few stalls down to try again. Lily kept barking at something, but even that didn't seem to draw anyone's attention to the fact that Jade was not an official, their partner, a member of their gang, or in one very gruesome case, the podiatrist who was going to fix their extremely unpleasant toenail fungus. Jade seemed to be so good at blending into the crowd that there was no chance of her keeping an eye out for people who might be Wendy, for all the other people assuming she was with them, telling her things and getting in the way. She gave up on the market for the day and took Lily back home. Perhaps this was not a good way to discover who Wendy really was after all. Maybe Jazz had been right all along. Apparently, you could be good at sneaking without being any good at being a detective. As Jade was packing away her cheese and bread, her phone buzzed on the counter, and Lily barked at it. It was a text from Jazz. Video call tonight. I have a surprise. Jade frowned, but typed, okay, what time? After dinner that evening, Jade sat down with Carter at the breakfast counter and propped her phone up against a bag of flour. Then she and Carter and Jazz pulled the connecting to audio face for several minutes, their faces too close to their screens. When the sound came on, Jade said hi to Jazz and asked, what's up? A chime announced some other people joining the call, and Jade saw the young woman from the alley by the garden store, as well as a strange young man who was grinning widely and wearing what appeared to be a giraffe onesie. Mum, this is Albie and Rose, Jazz announced. And we'd like to welcome you to your grand pen pal unveiling, Albie added with great ceremony. Wait, where's my mum? She changed her email password and now she can't remember it to get into anything, Rose supplied. Also, hi, garden shop stalker. Jade shook her head in disbelief. Why are you solving our puzzle for us? She asked the three young people, feeling somewhat put out. Well, Rose shrugged, after I saw you at the garden shop, I thought I kind of remembered you from when Albie and Jazz and I were all at high school together. My mum told me that she secretly really wanted to find out who you were. So when I saw you sneaking around after her, posting her letter, I got the impression that the two of you were writing a lot, but not really communicating very well. I found Jazz on Facebook and she confirmed that her mum was also trying to sneakily find out the identity of her secret pen pal. And we figured there surely can't be more than one pair of pen pal mums in this town doing that. So, interrupted Jazz, we think we've found who you're both trying to meet. So do you want to say hello or not? Albie put down his phone and there was a chime of someone entering the call. A face appeared. A face that Jade did, in fact, recognize. Yu-Wen? Oh, this is silly. We've been going to Tai Chi together for 10 years. And we're both in the community choir. I've seen your dog. Lily always goes up to your fence and says hello through the hole in it when we walk past. Yu-Wen didn't say anything because she was on mute and couldn't find the button to turn her sound on. She waved sheepishly at Jade. Are you disappointed that you already know each other? Asked Jazz anxiously. Jade shrugged and Yu-Wen shrugged back. Only if it means we stop writing letters, she answered, several moments later, having finally got the sound working. Jade nodded in agreement. Albie, Jazz and Rose seemed very pleased with themselves and quickly began reminiscing about high school while Jade and Yu-Wen looked on a little awkwardly. At the end of the call, they said goodbye, promising to continue writing, and then everyone looked uncomfortable while they waited for their computers and phones to actually hang up. Jade clicked a button and her screen went black. She stood up from the table. Then she heard Albie's voice say, Mum, what's that big bowl behind you? Jade frowned down at her phone, trying to work out what she'd actually done instead of hanging up. Oh dear, Yu-Wen's voice replied. I probably should have said something about that, I suppose. It's chocolate frogs. Jade put one in her first letter, and I said thank you and sent her one back, and somehow we've ended up with a tradition of always putting a chocolate frog in the letters. Except you can't eat chocolate, Albie cackled. So you've just been stockpiling them all. Jade burst out laughing. There was a pause from the phone. Sorry, laughed Jade. I'm actually still here. I promise I'm not trying to be sneaky. I'm not sure what I've done, but hanging up isn't it. There was a silence. Are you offended about the chocolate frogs? Asked Yu-Wen's voice, sounding worried and embarrassed. Jade laughed again. No, I'm laughing because I actually put the chocolate frog in that first letter, hoping my pen pal would like them, because I didn't. She paused, and I have a worse confession. For the first 5 or so letters, I wasn't actually putting in a new chocolate frog. I was just sending the same one back, hoping you'd send something else next time. Yu-Wen snorted with laughter. That was a well-travelled chocolate frog, she snickered. I must admit, I did send that first one back a few times too before I started my collection. I guess Rose was right about us writing lots without communicating much. Jade smiled. I guess my plan of leaving chocolate frogs around the place and watching to see who took them was never going to lead to you then. Yu-Wen chuckled. No. So no more chocolate frogs. No more chocolate frogs. Deal. Okay, Jade grinned. I'm actually hanging up this time. She poked at her phone. Actually, I can't find the button. All my buttons are gone. I'll end the call, Albie told them. And then it was quiet. Jade sat with Carter at her kitchen counter in silence and wondered what it would be like, writing to a pen pal she actually knew. But then, she supposed, in truth, she had actually known her pen pal all along. Dear Yu-Wen, isn't it funny how we both chose a fake name that kind of sounded like or had something to do with our real one? I'm not sure Wendy suits you though. It makes me think of Wendy's ice cream, and now I know you can't eat that. I'm not enclosing a chocolate frog, but I am enclosing a little metal frog magnet that I found in the garden shop. I have its pair, which is a paperweight, and I thought they'd be something for us to remember our silliness by. I guess, for different reasons, neither of us makes a very good spy. Our dogs found out who each other were before we did. I still kind of want to know what goes on in the alley down the side of the garden shop now, though, even though I know it'll probably be something really gross or embarrassing. Do you think we'd be better at detective work if we did it as a team? I think the first thing we need to investigate is who on earth it actually is in this town who likes chocolate frogs so much. How does Sunday sound for dog walking and sleuthing? Love, Jade.
Nice. That's good. Listen, Sarah, I think we should have everyone that's on screen do a turning on face.
Still connecting to audio face together.
Maybe simultaneously, and take a screenshot.
All right.
And then kind of leave this page face when you can't find the leave button, because that's actually happened to me in a very large group. You know, the Mindful in May one lot. Last year, there would be, you know, I don't know, 15,000 people on a meditation. There's a bit of a chat afterwards, and people can put on their audio and they can speak. You don't see faces in this, by the way. Everyone's just a name. So, most of you are completely anonymous. But time and time again, people would go, okay, I really have to go. And then you'd see their name and they were still there like 25 minutes later. And eventually they'd put they'd put a hand up, you know, and they'd put in the chat thing, you know.
Yeah.
How to get off. And the same with our Zoom choir, which was, you know, you say, well, if you move your cursor down to the bottom, the leave thing will pop up. Oh, thank you, I can see it now, you know. We should
you want to all do the face like we're trying to connect to the audio and take a picture of it. All right, we'll try. I've got to get my screenshot buttons lined up. I'll probably have the best connecting to audio face of all.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to lean forward, don't you?
Yeah, you got to do that.
I just quickly love you.
Thank you. Andrew are clearly disguised as removalists.
We had our removalist come and visit us last week, Sarah, and he walked around the house put his hands out like this, and he was doing cubic meterage like this. He walked into every room. He said, "That's 5, 4, 3." 10.
He's doing his arms measure.
Yeah, and he worked out his cubic meterage. He didn't even count the boxes or look at the furniture much. He says, "Yeah, that's one truck, no problem."
I quite like that. What about putting low tech in the next?
Low tech, like like using the arms.
Like using your feet for meters.
Yeah.
Steps,
Yeah.
And you've got different shoe sizes, it gets problematic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so Lloyd's meter would be quite a bit longer than my meter.
That's right.
What about the good old wall tap? Let's find the studs on the wall.
Yeah.
Go tapping
I
to
still
find
use
them.
that. Works way better than my stud finder.
Yeah, I bet it does work well, but in an inexperienced hand, that could be quite entertaining.
Oh, this is true. Yeah.
Any other requests for our next story?
Moving house.
Yeah. All right.
Good one.
That goes quite well with the low tech measurements then.
It does actually. And what about it kind of reverts back a little bit to that your very first story, the thing about deciding what to dispense with.
Yep.
Big versus small would be quite good as well in that, because it's not a very accurate. Precise.
Yeah, so you use your low tech measurements to decide what's big versus small. Yeah.
Same thing. Or far away.
Yeah. What about when natural things like trees or mountains or whatever appear to be trying to tell you something?
Messages from mountains.
Yeah, messages from mountains, etc.
Yeah.
Excuse me, everyone, but our woolly Albany bush, just before it died, and I'm not kidding, sent up all these little shoots, and they were definitely doing this.
Oh, is it died now? So it was like, I'm not happy, and then it died.
We're in deep trouble here. But, yeah.
Oh dear.
You don't need that one. That's not a request for foul messages from things.
I think you should, this is left field, but you should do puncture repairs.
That is a bit left field.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's good to have a left field one though. Like if they all go together, it's a little hard.
Particularly on bicycle tyres.
Okay.
It's the most difficult thing to do in the world.
Your thumbs. That's what you always used to complain about, sore thumbs when you had to do your tyre.
Putting the patch on the bloody tyre and making it stick with that crappy glue, and then you put it back in, you pump it up, and it goes down again.
Well, that's why that beautiful Chinese instruction kit with the puncture
In case of
where it said, "Be careful using the glue in case of finger." You know what I mean? That's sort of totally.
On a similar related note then, what about those circumstances where you get a puncture and there is no logical explanation for how you've managed to get that particular thing in the tyre, but then the other situations where you find that someone's broken something and you hadn't realised and you've gone through it and everything's unscathed? How does that happen?
I told a story. I think you're the only other one that kind of responded to that, and I was a bit late, because I thought, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah. No, that was a lovely story. Yeah, tell us that.
I've still got the both of them, and I'm just considering, do I get rid of them both or put succulents in or something? But so I've been lent this beautiful blue vase, and just a little squat vase, a bit similar to a glass, but very nice, a lovely glaze on it, and just fading like a reverse of the sand and the sky type of thing. Gorgeous.
Oh, beautiful.
And I've been lent this, and I've had it for a bit of a while. Probably give it a posy or something and take this home. But I went to return it, and I noticed a fine crack in it. I thought, oh my God, you know, Mum will actually be upset. My mum was very good at not getting upset about accidents. I didn't like, you know, because I think it was my nana's and she gave it to Mum or whatever.
Hmm.
And I delayed and delayed, and then I was in a second-hand shop, and my God, it was an identical vase. I couldn't believe my luck. So I sort of triumphantly said, "Oh, I brought your vase back." Mum went, "Oh, I thought this had a fine crack in it." I was like, not enough to leak, but just you know, a fine line. So you know, really clearly sprung because I've just done the what is it, kintsugi thing, and you know,
Yeah.
in a really obvious way, and gone, I've tried to make it more beautiful. I'll tell you another thing that intrigues me, and it's just sparked because of the vase thing, is when there's something that you really, really want to find out, you know, investigations again, and you really just can't because doing so would cause more problems with. So what I've got is a vase, which was my nana's, which is a beautiful glaze, not a high polished glaze, but a beautiful glaze, speckled blue, a bit like a gorgeous bird's egg.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, you know, it's a bit genie bottle. It's, you know, one of these gorgeous onion-shaped type of thing. And in there is something metallic, which my mum always said was farthing, because she said my nana believed if you put a farthing, something copper, in the water, the flowers in the vase would last well.
Yeah.
So the only way of finding out whether it is a farthing in the vase would be to break the vase.
Mm.
So you can't do it.
Right. Yeah. That thing.
Here's another suggestion, could go in the story. Perhaps if I took my vase down to the dentist, you know how they'll do like a camera
So
thing.
can you put the camera in there? Yes.
When I go for my CAT scan
And shine your light.
yeah, I go, look, would you mind?
Just take it to your next medical appointment and say, look, would you mind putting like the endoscopy thing into this vase for me?
I need to go, but before I do, can I please throw in another left field thought?
All right.
I've been reading in a couple of unrelated books about rune symbols.
Ooh.
Can I please put that in?
Rune
Symbols, yeah.
All right. That'd be very interesting.
In whatever way you choose, but that's
Okay.
what I have come across. I wasn't thinking about runes in any particular way. So these were quite
so it was
unconnected,
one of
but
those things where the thing came up
it
twice.
almost is, but at the moment it's only twice. You see.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I'll have to look out
All
for runes now. Stuff about runes.
Yes. Well, that's
So
right.
we're
There's
good.
going to be a third one. I'll keep my eye open.
Okay, so we have lots of potentially sort of moving house stuff, what to keep, low tech measurements, big versus small, and like the messages from nature one might sort of fit into going to a new place too. Repairing your punctures. How did the punctures happen? And then trying to find out an answer that you can't answer without breaking something or whatever.
Yeah, I think actually that
And
kind of field thing of you know, spontaneously asking an expert in one field, could they possibly sort out some kind of problem for you, is quite a nice thing to do too.
Oh yeah, I know what I'll do. I'll ask the dentist to. So asking expert pet with something strange, like, can you look in my vase, please?
I got stopped in the supermarket, and this chap said to me, "Look, do you think this would go well in a Chinese?"
I had like a vegetable or something, and
you know, it's more
like asking a stranger for advice. That is a weird one, isn't it?
Clearly,
Happens to me all the time.
does it?
People just
Yeah,
come up to you and
Yeah, I always get asked for directions, which is really unfortunate.
I feel like that's me a little bit too.
And usually when I'm overseas.
So that's going to be on the 12th of June, I think. Just check that.
Hey, Sarah, we won't be here on the
Okay.
12th of June.
You're going to be in your new house.
Yes, with what's called NBN.
Oh yes, and with a proper connection. Yeah. Of course, tomorrow there is art. So once we get off this call, I will send everyone all the links for that.